trending in the wrong direction. Here with my man Austin. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, AJ? It's been a tough couple of weeks here. 3-game losing streak for Indiana, and it kind of culminated with a brutal loss to a very good Michigan team. But in the last couple of games, they've had these leads, they've played well early, things have flipped. What do you see that has gone wrong here recently for the Hoosiers?
I mean, I see a myriad of things, but a difficult schedule is something that I saw. We talked about on one of the prior podcasts, and I talked about the 5 games coming up. And this was that stretch. I mean, that stretch with Rutgers, that stretch with Michigan, that Michigan State, the games that we were supposed to win, we didn't. And that's what made games like the Michigan game a tougher game. So once again, we're not getting any easy baskets. We're not getting stops on defensive end to get out and get easier baskets. When we've had fun playing the game against teams like Iowa, it's because we've made plays defensively. We've gotten out, we've run, we've hit threes in transition. I mean, we have Trace running the lane, finishing at the basket. You just didn't see any of that anymore. It's a real grind to score baskets. It's a real, and then when we get open shots, we're tight and don't make them. And that makes it even worse. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a guard-heavy league. It's a guard-heavy college basketball season. And, you have to have consistent guard play with Franklin out of that game. I just didn't see us having much of a chance with the guard-heavy attack that Michigan has. So, I mean, I think a culmination of all of our issues really showed up in these last 3 games.
Now, you had your ups and your downs in your Indiana career in terms of the team and all of the things that you guys faced. What was a locker room like with Bob Knight? Keeping it PG, of course. What was a locker room like with Bob Knight when you were going through those downs and when the team was struggling?
It was surprising that most of the time he wasn't, like pounding on us negatively. People would think, listening to that old rant that he had back in the 80s or the 90s, and, people think that that's the way he was, but he wasn't like that. It was more of a chess game. He's always trying to figure out how we could get out of those holes. I mean, I saw a stat, I think we didn't lose more than 2 games in a row either. During that time period. And that's the problem with the Big Ten. You have to put together win streaks in order to win. You're going to lose some games. It just is what it is. And you have to come back and you have to win the games you're supposed to win. And, and I think we did that during the Knight era. So it wasn't as bad. We just weren't able to put together the 10-game win streak in the Big Ten in order to close it out, because the Big Ten was tough as well as it is today. So he was able to just make those particular moves we needed within the team and get those guys in the rotation that we needed to really help us win at those times. So it wasn't as bad as people would think it is.
Were you ever on the bubble? Were you ever a team that was struggling to get into the NCAA tournament?
My freshman year, I think we were kind of on the bubble. We had got off to like a 15-1 start or a 14-1 start back in '97, and but we had a 9-9 Big Ten record that year. We just did not play well towards the end of the year. It didn't start in the Big Ten. It actually started after we got shellacked by Kentucky. And we were number 5 in the country. They were number 1, and they just beat the brakes off of us. And it was like downhill from there. But as a freshman, I didn't really know what was going on. I'm just like, next game. But we ended up putting a nice run together at the end of the Big Ten, but we had enough quality wins to get in the tournament. I'm not sure if we were even on the bubble, but we were at 8 seed. We ended up being an 8 seed. Ended up getting beaten by Colorado, Chauncey Billups in the first round of the NCAA tournament, which wasn't a good matchup for us. But we had a lot of issues within the team at that time. So we luckily got in. But Coach Knight never talked about the NCAA tournament. It wasn't, hey, we got to win this to win the game, to get in the tournament. It was never that. It was always about the next opponent and trying to find a spark in our team, even though we had some issues in our team. So I can imagine with Coach Miller and what he's going through, you got to it's game by game. They turn on their Twitters every day, and that's all everybody's talking about. I can imagine that's difficult, but you got to really, really put yourself in the bubble, focus, and try to just win these last 2 games.
I feel like the toughest part for me is that I never played collegiate basketball, so I can't relate, but I know you can. Mm-hmm. What is it like? I don't doubt you guys ever went through a stretch like this, but a 7 straight losses to Purdue.
No.
And the fact that they have not won at Purdue since 2013. I mean, is there a side of these guys, the competitive side, that says we want to be that group that breaks through? That feels like an opportunity that's in front of this team.
Man, I've definitely never been on that side of a losing streak. That's what makes this we're very different when when people trying to defend the season, the way things are going. It's like, but you lost like 6 or 7 times in a row to Purdue and Michigan, and it's like I can't. I don't really have anything to say about that. That's unacceptable in all of its form. And you should break through and win one of those games at some point 2 years ago. So I'm not even talking about today, but at this point, you know, I'm expecting nothing less than a win at Purdue and a win at Michigan State to close this thing out, only for pride purposes. At the end of the day, I'm finishing my season. If I'm out Durham, I'm finishing my senior year extremely strong. I'm Tracer. If he's going to stay or go, don't whatever. I'm finishing with these 2 wins because I know how much these 2 wins mean to the culture, to Hoosier Nation, and all the people who support it and have supported IU basketball. Because I know Coach Miller would even tell you that's unacceptable to have that long of a losing streak against the top teams in the Big Ten. You have to find a way to break through. You have to.
Very important week for Indiana at Michigan State tonight. If you're listening to this on Tuesday, they play at Michigan State, at Purdue on Saturday. AJ, it's going to be a tough road to the NCAA tournament, but this team's got the pieces, and we'll see if they can put it together. But the guy who's in charge of all of this and all of Indiana athletics, Scott Dolson, an awesome conversation that you got to have with him earlier this week that we're playing here coming up. What did you take away from your conversation with Scott?
I left the conversation with Scott less worried about Indiana basketball. He helped me believe that he's here to make the right decisions, make the necessary changes, and to get Indiana basketball back to being ultra competitive as it has been over its time. He talked about his history there. He talked about, what it meant to him to be a part, how he became a part of the program, the relationships that he still holds today. And so when I heard those things, I know those guys are in his ear and in his inbox, letting him know that, hey, this is totally unacceptable. And I understood the tone in his voice that it was unacceptable to him. And that whenever that opportunity came, or whenever necessary, he was going to make the right decision to whatever that is to push Indiana basketball back to the forefront. So I definitely left that conversation excited about the future of Indiana basketball with Archie Miller, or without Archie Miller. I know that Scott Dolson is going to make the right decision because of his history and the passion that he shares. I mean, he's been around the program 25, 30 years. I mean, you have to have the little bit on your neck every night, when you hear 7 straight losses to Purdue or like that's just not something that rings loud and clear in the ears of former players and former managers and people who've worked in that program. So I left that conversation excited.
Well, he had a lot of success in his managerial time at Indiana, winning a national championship in 1987. Before we get into the podcast, I did want to give a shout out to the women's basketball team. They are a top 10 team in the country for the first time in their program history. So while the men are struggling, AJ, the women are really balling out here in Bloomington.
Yeah, we talked about that as well, man. And we got a lot of positive things. I know Indiana basketball, men's basketball is the cream of the crop when it comes to the attention that it gets at IU. I said, but I think it's time for IU fans to start looking around and really, really appreciating the other positive things that are happening as we get Indiana basketball back to where we want it to be. It's all a journey, but the Indiana women's basketball team's top 10 is good upset win over Ohio State on the road. That's just not something to gloss over. And then we got the football team is doing well. Baseball been doing well. Soccer has always been a top 5 club. I mean, you got great athletics going on at IU, man, as we focus on men's basketball. But shout out to Coach Terry Morin and that staff over there. Actually has an Illinois guy on the staff that I learned, Brett Wiersbe. I don't know if I said his name
Brett.
right. Yeah,
Brett's
and
fantastic.
yes, shout out to that guy, man. I haven't really met him, but he's from a couple minutes down the road from where I'm from now. So I'm excited about IU basketball. I wish we could be there to support, man.
Yeah, I've had a couple conversations with Coach Wiersbe, and he's fantastic. He's a great reason why that program is heading in the right direction. As you mentioned, the athletic department moving in a great direction as well with the man at the helm, Scott Dolson. He stepped into the house with AJ Guyton. Let's listen to that conversation.
Let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at Bet Rivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up with Bet Rivers yet, now's the time. Bet Rivers Sportsbook is offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one play through to turn your bonus into cash money. When you win at Bet Rivers Sportsbook, they pay fast. And now it's even faster with Rush Pay instant approval for withdrawals. It's safe, it's secure, it's reliable. With March Madness around the corner, there's never been a better time to give Bet Rivers Sportsbooks a try. Go to betrivers.com today or download the Bet Rivers iOS app. Must be 21 years or older. Gambling a problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome everybody to the House of Hoosier podcast, and I'm with the man who actually has the keys to the house. You know, I don't have any keys anymore, but this guy has the keys to the house. He can come and go as he please. He's a IU grad of 1988, right?
Correct.
1988 IU grad, born and raised. Everybody give it up for Scott Dolson. How you doing, my man?
Man, I'm doing great, AJ. It's great to see you.
Man, it's great to see you, man. And you look like you're in good spirits right now,
man.
I'm
feeling good. Feeling really good.
You took over back in July 1st of 2020, and I'm sure it's been a whirlwind since then, and we're going to get to that. But first, you know, I use every podcast to kind of introduce our guests as if people don't know them, starting from the beginning, man. You were born in Michigan City, Indiana. Tell us about your roots. What was it life like for a little Scott Dolson coming up in Michigan City, and who are you crediting with the main influences in your life and helped kind of started that process of helping you get to where you are today?
Well, I tell you, first of all, thanks again for having me on, AJ, man. It means a lot. I've always thought so much of you, and we'll talk about you in a little bit, because I remember hearing your name the first time when I was working for Tim Knight. And he went to see you play and came back and told me about a guy named AJ Guyton, which was really cool. And,
awesome.
And where you ended up from the time he told me about you. But for me, growing up in Michigan City was awesome. You know, I grew up in I think a great environment. Mom and dad really worked hard and really kind of showed me what hard work meant. And then grew up an IU fan. You know, I've said before, I was 9 years old and 1976 when we won the championship, and you know, the year before in 75 we were undefeated and lost. And my grandfather was a big IU fan. He came to school here for 1 year but couldn't afford to stay in school, and his dream was always for his grandkids to go to school here. And so there's a lot of meaning to that. And then also it just kind of by happenstance, you know, I thought I was going to play for IU, AJ. My goal, I thought I was going to be Quinn Buckner or Wayne Radford, one of those guys. And then, you know, obviously I had a talent problem, but by coincidence, you know, I was coming to IU regardless. But my best friend in high school was Delray Brooks, who was McDonald's All-American and Mr. Basketball. And, you know, I'll never forget when he came on his visit here the fall before our senior in high school. He called me from the visit and he said, "Hey, Scott, I'm coming to IU. I committed to play for Coach Knight." And it shocked me because I thought he was going to go to UCLA. That was his dream school. I was always going to IU, but it was during that phone call then he said, "Hey, I think you should be a manager," because Steve Alford's roommate was a manager at the time. He was a year older than Delray and I. And he said, "You love IU basketball more than anybody I know. I think it'd be a great opportunity for you. And that way you got stuff to do while I'm at practice and you love basketball." So that kind of got it all started. But my roots back in Michigan City, just like most people, you know, that's what my friends, my family, you know, it was a real melting pot in Michigan City, real diverse community. And it really helped me, I think, establish sort of my roots.
Yeah. And so Delray Brooks, just for the people, make sure they caught that, was really the catalyst in helping to get you to be a manager. Once the hoop dream kind of died out, you got to figure out a way to get in where you fit in and to be a part of that. So you looked into becoming a manager. What was that process like back then? Like how did it? I know he has the connection to maybe connect you to somebody, but what was the process like back then to become a manager?
Yeah, it's a really good point because it was really competitive, like it is today. I mean, being a basketball manager was a big deal, and I didn't know much about it until I really owed all to him because I wouldn't even thought about it if it hadn't been for him.
Wow.
Because I wasn't a manager in high school or anything, and he told me about it, and then And then in a way, because in fact, it's funny, AJ, because we came down, my sister was a year older than me. We brought her down to school, and Delray had already committed to IU at that time. And we stopped by to visit Coach Knight, just Delray and I was with him. And he told Coach Knight, I want to be, this is going to be my roommate, Scott. He wants to be a manager. And I remember Coach Knight looked at me and he said, just so you know, I'm a lot of times I'm tougher on the managers than I am the players. So I don't know if you can handle that. And was kind of joking with me a little bit. And then I'll never forget, he looked at me as I was walking away and he said, you always look like you were up to something. Are you up to something or something like that? It was kind of funny. But anyway, I interviewed for the position. I applied, but I admit I had a little bit of thumb on the scale because of Delray. I don't think I was 100% guaranteed, but it helped me get in and, went through the interview process. And then again, one of the best things that happened to me, certainly professionally, and just, my lifelong fraternity, best friends, whether it's players or managers, and, going through that time. I was here for a great time period from 85 to 88. Delray ultimately transferred to Providence, played for Rick Pitino there. They made the Final Four in 87, the year we won it. Syracuse beat them. And just the way it all came together was really unbelievable. And just drawing that experience every day.
Yeah, that's unbelievable, man. Just that connection, that friendship was able to spark everything that we see today. And people don't understand. That's why you gotta, network and take advantage of opportunity when you're in school. Something I wish I would have did a little better. When you're a big man on campus, you kind of keep to yourself instead of, because people always want to talk. You want to talk. If I had to rewind it, I would do it all over again. I would make way more connections than I did.
That's a good point.
Because you might, and I tell young players that all the time now, like, don't put your head down and walk down the hallway, man. Connect, meet people, because IU is just a melting pot of different people and that end up in different professions that you get opportunities from. So that's interesting that happened to you. Do you remember the moment that you were told that you were a manager? Was it was it exciting?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I was excited. It was more. It was a more formal process than I expected. I didn't know what to expect, just going through the process of interviewing and all that, and the questions, and the senior managers asked you questions, and it was so it was definitely a relief. I thought I had a chance because of Delray, and I had an in, but you never know till it happens. And I was really excited. And to be honest with you, AJ, I still didn't know exactly what I was doing. I didn't know what I was getting into. And then, you start going to the preseason conditioning and you sort of get thrown into it. And like most, sort of fraternities in a way, you start out on the lowest rung and you're doing the grunt work. And as you build, you get more responsibility as you grow. And so I remember just the older guys putting me through the tests, and they knew I was Delray's best friend, so maybe they even were a little harder on me, thinking, hey, this guy's got to earn his way. But those guys to this day, when I look back, I can give you name after name, guys like Bill Heimbrook and Jim Kelly and Jeff Stuckey, and these guys, Mark Sims, that were older managers than me, that really groomed me into learning what it was like to really work hard, have responsibility. And I draw on it to this day, that experience I had, to be honest with you.
When you walked out there that first practice, was it like, were you shocked at because I remember the intensity of the managers. I remember the speed and velocity with which they had to move from drill to drill. And I just remember that. I mean, they're sweating sometimes harder. Because back then, did you have the gray shirt and the red shorts? I think it was gray.
That's right. Well, I'll tell you the funniest thing. I'll never forget my first practice, because the managers get everything ready for practice, and then we play games, right? Yep. And so we're playing a game. I mean, and so the 10 of the managers go out and play 5-on-5, and so I'm out there. Coach Knight's over there on the side, so it's almost like you're playing like it's a tryout. You think if enough players get hurt, I may be that guy they need to practice. So even if you were any good in high school. So we're out there playing. This is really funny. And I remember we're out there playing, and you think, man, you're just playing a pickup game. So we get out there, and I'm a freshman, and I get the ball and fire up some crazy shot. And one of the older guys is like, man, you need to set a screen and get Bill open. And I'm like, what do you mean set a screen and get Bill open? I'm from Michigan City. Bill needs to get himself open. And then I do it again. And I do something crazy, and man, they subbed me out of the manager game. They sent me to go film upstairs and said, man, if you're not going to run the offense, the managers ran the offense. We ran the motion offense. We set screens. we're playing like it's a real deal. So I just remember thinking how funny that was. I'm thinking that's a manager's pickup game. So I learned real quick, I need to get Bill open, man. I need to be a screener. And then the crazy thing is practice, like you said, was so intense that I didn't even realize, because we did the individual kind of stuff before coach really started practice. I thought that was so intense. I thought practice was half over. It was so intense. And then come to find out, we hadn't even started practice yet. It was just the individual work stuff. So you know how that went.
That's that pre-practice, man.
That pre-practice stuff you didn't just come out and shoot around. You had to like cut and do all the stuff. And Joby Wright grabbed me and took me down because he recruited Delray. And so I got to know him a little bit through Bob Knight's basketball camps and all that. And so Joby took me down to one end, and I helped out with Uwe Blop and Mike Giomi and Manis Pelkowski. We had this like blocking pad, and you go up and you're hitting them as they're going up. And it was just, it was intense, man. It was fun. It was
You
neat.
didn't sit around as an IU manager. Like you probably were more tired than the players at the end, as far as just doing everything. Like you said, the pad work with some guys, you know what I mean? And then rebounding, and then you had to know the play. You had to know exactly what the drill was. You had to, you had to set up. He had to demonstrate setting up a cut. You had to do it too. So
AJ, we had a defensive drill my freshman year, probably my fifth or sixth practice. We had a defensive drill, and Winston Morgan came through. Do you remember Winston Morgan? Do you remember that name? So Winston was tough. He was a junior at that time, and so I didn't know the drill that I accidentally knocked the ball away from him on this defensive drill. I knew it made him. I could tell he was kind of looking at me like, "What are you doing?" So the next time he came through, he accidentally headbutted me, and I had to get like 9 stitches in my head. I had blood everywhere, and like I learned real quick. You gotta be careful on those defensive drills because Winston wasn't real happy I knocked the ball away from him.
I mean,
kind of funny.
I talked to Joe Pasternak. I talked to Dusty May.
Yeah,
and, they talked about how intense that the practice were, and how intense. Then when you were done with practice, you had to go do mountains of film, and you had to help the assistant coach break down the play. So you just had a real basketball teaching from Coach Knight, from being a manager for Coach Knight. And I know you guys appreciate that because it's the detail in what he does that enables a lot of us to be successful. He made us look at things that we never really looked at before as players. So, and before I get to anything else, I want to do what I call my Hoosier 10, man. I'm going to ask you 10 questions from your time at IU, and so you can answer them to the best of your ability.
Okay.
It was a long time ago, so I understand if you don't remember, right?
I got you.
What dorm apartment did you stay in on campus as a freshman?
I lived at Reed Beck, fourth floor. Reed Beck, fourth floor.
People always remember that.
Yeah.
What 3 restaurants do you recommend to people when they ask you where to eat at in Bloomington?
I would recommend, I'm a big pizza I could eat pizza for every meal.
Right.
So I'm a big Mother Bears for sure.
Mother Bears.
Like a little swing in on the side, swinging pizzas like that. Now they moved to a new location, but I love the old swing in. Yeah. But I also love Malibu Grill. Okay. And then D'Angelo's for a little Italian restaurant. Those are the ones that I like those.
Those are the recommendations.
Yep.
When you were in school, what do you remember the name of the popular bar to hang out in where you were in school?
Well, actually, AJ, I was a bartender at Kilroy's.
Whoa!
When I after basketball season my senior year, so I'm a Kilroy's expert. I did all kinds of that. I learned a lot doing that as a bartender. I mean, you make a little money as a student, and because I went 4.5 years to graduate. Okay. And so that extra kind of half year, I bartended at Kilroy's and learned a lot. So I got some great stories about it. I laugh because in fact, 2 of my kids that have graduated from IU now have both been bartenders as a student at Kilroy's.
Oh,
so
really?
we kind of laugh. I say, if this AD thing doesn't work out, I can always go back to bartending at Kilroy's. Yeah, I've got that skill in my repertoire.
Kilroy's better get alumni hall up in there.
Exactly.
And okay, what's we just talked about your manager experience. Is there a practice that sticks out to you the most as a manager that was the most memorable for you?
Yeah, there was a practice beginning of my sophomore year, and it was a 6 a.m. practice. I can't remember after what loss or what had led to this 6 a.m. practice, but it was just one of those practices that was epic. And if you talk to anybody who was on the team at that time, it was just so intense and just a real building process to get the team to come together. And that was one of those that was an epic one, man. It was a 6 a.m. just
Right.
It was a tough one.
It had to be Purdue or Michigan. I know.
It may have been.
Coach was not losing to them two teams.
It was legendary. It was one of those. It was epic. It was.
What was the most memorable game you can remember? I know you did the Final Four.
Yeah.
Let's exclude that. We all know. But outside of the 1987 Final Four, what was the most memorable game that you can remember?
For sure, in 1987. So again, my junior year, the year we won it all, we won at Michigan, and to me, it was by far the most memorable game because. Michigan had a great team. You know, the Big Ten was kind of like it is now. It's really loaded. And we had a big lead. We're at Michigan. And you know how it is. It's like you against the world. It felt like, you know, there's 20 of us there, including the players. And then, so we had a big lead, AJ. And in the second half, they hit a bunch of threes. Let's say we were up 15 or something like that. Well, they ended up taking the lead. Coach Knight called a timeout, and the crowd was so loud that he was screaming in the huddle. We were all kind of over. You couldn't hear a word he was saying. It was so loud. It was crazy loud. And we ended up coming back and fighting back. And then Steve Alford hit a shot at the buzzer to win the game at the end.
Really?
And I remember running off the floor, and the first ones in the locker room were Coach Knight, Joe Hillman, and Steve Alford, and me. I was in there. And it was this elation. And Joby came in and said, hey, they put a couple seconds back on the clock. And they had to go back out. Wow. And we ended up winning anyway. But I just remember the intensity of that win was one of my favorite wins of all time. Because it just felt like that crowd, man, was everybody against us. And because they come way back. And for us to win it at the end like that was a really memorable win.
And that had to be Glenn Robinson. I'm sorry, Glenn Rice. Sorry, Glenn Rice.
It was Gary Grant. I'm not sure Glenn Rice was.
He wasn't there yet.
I don't. But it was Gary Grant was their great player.
Oh,
and then they had several big guys. Lloyd Vaught, maybe.
Oh yeah, Lloyd Sam Mills.
You see, Terry Mills. Was it Terry?
I was Terry Mills. I'm getting my name.
Yeah, they were loaded, and I tell you, it was a dogfight, and it was just a good old fashioned Big Ten. But for me, road games. I don't know about you, AJ, but road games are always so fun because if you get that road win and you know, we just had a target on our back and everybody wanted to beat us. And Coach Knight used to say that, you know, wherever we go, and like this is their biggest game of the year. And that's why you come to Indiana is you want that target on your back. So it was fun to win those road games.
I agree with you totally, man. I think my best games were on the road. Like you just love leaving there and it's silent.
Isn't it great?
You start walking up the stairs and you just like, you know, it's over. So when I say Purdue, what comes to mind?
Tough competitors, man. It's Purdue. I don't care what it is, but you know, obviously in basketball, it just doesn't matter what the records are. It doesn't matter who's got All-American, who's, you know, whatever. Just Purdue's never easy, and just a great rivalry. And you know, over the years, it's always been neat for me to see, you know, off the court. And you know, in fact, Purdue's AD, Mike Bobinski, is one of my closest friends in the business and in the Big Ten. He's a great person. I admire him a lot, but it's crazy when you get on in between the lines.
Right.
You know, just tough, just really tough, really
Absolutely.
tough.
Absolutely. What's your favorite Bob Knight memory?
You know, it's interesting. There's so many of them.
So many.
You know, so many of them. I do. One of the things that I would say is there was you kind of remember what you sort of I want to remember. And what I always want to remember for me is there was a practice when I was probably, again, pretty young, maybe a sophomore manager. And I remember Coach Knight, it was like a weekend practice and nobody's around. It may have been during the holidays, but nobody was around. And they brought in all these kids from a hospital and they brought them in. They came down that ramp in Assembly Hall. And there was actually one kid that was in, they wheeled in a bed that he was in, and kids in wheelchairs, kids who had really challenges, big challenges. And I didn't know exactly where they came from, but they were all at the end of the court. These kids that were sick and had just a lot of problems. And I remember, you know, coaches, they just watched practice, and then coach went along. Nobody's around. Nobody took pictures. Nobody was there. And I remember standing down there at the end of practice, and I watched Coach Knight go by every kid and say something to them. And, you know, I'm not saying, you know, coach wasn't perfect, and coach had, you know, like all of us, he had faults. But I tell you what I loved about that, and why I always remember it is he did it really the impact he had on those kids. And I could see the looks on their faces and how he talked to them. And he did it for the right reasons. It wasn't for a photo op. It wasn't for him to getting attention. He really wanted to help those kids. And so for me, again, he's not perfect. That's kind of a sappy story. But I just love that moment because I thought, man, that just said a lot to me about him, that he did it for the right reasons. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's a consensus with Coach Knight, man. Just the things that he did behind the scenes that nobody, when we live in an era today where everything has to be shown. Right. He was a guy that, and that's why the things that are perceived negative, they get so much traction because you never saw the book club or you never saw going to visit the hospital or all the things he taught us as players, man. So I can definitely concur with that.
Yeah.
Excluding the current team, who was your favorite IU player to watch?
I tell you who I really like watching, and he was a freshman when I was a senior, was Jay Edwards.
Right.
I tell you, Jay Edwards was if I look back to my time here, Jay was one of the most incredibly unique players. I think he was obviously gifted. He was really a really smart player, and I just thought Jay just was an incredible player. I love watching him play. In practice, he would do things in practice. And I played, I was a manager with Steve Alford. It was unbelievable. And I've been here for so long, I've seen some incredible players. You go down the list, including you, AJ. But Jay was just he just had this way. I remember a game at Minnesota, again, tough environment, like all Big Ten environments. And man, he silenced that crowd. I mean, he just hit some, and his shots, the way they went in, they just didn't even touch the rim. It just silent. He was so cool. I mean, he just was an assassin out there. So I love watching Jay. I really did.
I had Jay on probably a few weeks ago. Yeah. And he's the same thing you just described is how he described himself. He was just like, man, it was, I said, what was your biggest adjustment to college? He's like, it wasn't no adjustment, man. It was pretty easy, actually. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, it's pretty easy. I was like, man, but it's a consensus.
His freshman year, AJ, we played Kentucky in the RCA Dome his freshman year. We ended up losing in overtime. He had a shot to put it in overtime. And I remember you could talk to the players who were on the team that, he just didn't let anything affect him. I mean, it was like he had this other level of calmness that he was so cool. And I remember just talking to him in the locker room or before the game, and he just was like, and he wasn't, I would say, a cocky person.
No, he wasn't.
He just knew he was going to make it.
Right, it's going in.
Knew. Yeah, he just knew.
All right, final question for my Hoosier 10, man. Who is Scott Dolson's Mount Rushmore of IU basketball? Who's Scott Dolson? Wow. Nobody else is. And I know a lot of guys say, I don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah. So I would say, my Mount Rushmore is, to be honest with you, I have to just go back to my era. And for me, because of the national championship in '87, I think of those guys on that team. And I think of whether, it's the seniors, it's Steve Alford, Todd Meyer, and Daryl Thomas, and then you throw in Dean Garrett and Keith Smart. And then my guys that, whether it's Joe Hillman or Steve Isle or Cree Smith or Brian Sloan and Jeff Oliphant and Tony Freeman and David Miner and those guys, man, that to me, because that team, when you go through a year like that and you win it all, just as a manager, I had nothing to do with that team other than just I was fortunate enough to be around and to be able to watch that and just great personalities. And Dean and Keith, I don't know if you've had either Dean or Keith on. Those guys just were the perfect fit and the greatest people. They were just the greatest people, and they just fit so well. And so that's my Mount Rushmore. Those guys. Absolutely. Those are my guys.
I'm taking that answer. I love that answer, and I definitely had Steve on. Steve was my first one.
Oh, really?
And, so I was a rookie in that one, but we had a great conversation. You should check that out when you get a chance. Driving around, during that time.
Yeah.
Back and forth in Indianapolis, and then. And I also had Keith on as well, man. And he was really, really reflective, man, and had a lot of great things to say about everybody. So make sure you check those out when you get a chance.
I will.
Yeah, definitely. And so let's talk a little bit about 1987 experience, man, from the manager's perspective, man. What did you, from your perspective, what was magical about that run and what was special about that team from your perspective?
Really, AJ, I say the leadership on the team. I mean, a lot of what I do today, just leading our department, I really based a lot on what I learned by watching that team from the inside, because, you know, you have to recruit well, and you have to have talent, and you have to develop the talent and have a great game plan. And obviously Coach Knight was the best, but you also have to have leadership. And to me, that team with Steve, Todd, and Daryl had a leadership team that really led Ricky Callaway and Dean and Keith and all those guys. And when you've got players who, you know, can lead the film session and hold everyone accountable, but also keep everyone together during the tough times. And, you know, it just had this way that it's hard to describe it. When you see it, though, you know it. And so really for me in my role now, you know, I talk to our coaches about it, and I look for, you know, do we have the locker room where we've got the right leadership we're building? Because I think, again, you have to have all those things to be able to win and win consistently. And the difference between that year and my other years really felt like the leadership just really came together. And I just had so much respect for how those guys, you know, led that team to that championship. Because we weren't the most talented team in the country. Right. We had great players, but we were the best team. And I think the leadership was huge in that.
I mean, I told Steve and Keith, I said, you guys beat, you know, 3 NBA pros, Ronnie Cycli, Derek Coleman, and Sherman Douglas. And, you know, with guys that, you know, Steve played a couple of years, and like me and myself, Keith Smart had a cup of coffee, whoever, but that just goes to Coach Knight's ability to galvanize and get them prepared to beat that team. From your perspective, what did you think made Coach Knight special as a coach and able to galvanize and lead and get guys to play up to their full capabilities?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question, AJ. What I always liked was that he had this ability, as I watched it, that the players focused so much on him and his expectations, and it was so intense of what he expected that in my view, maybe they blocked out, just because they were focused so much on what he was asking them to do, maybe the moment. Like they weren't as worried about, hey, we got to beat Purdue, or we've got a huge crowd here, there's a lot of pressure. It seemed like our whole focus was Coach Knight in the game plan and executing that. And it sounds so corny, but that's what to me is, you know, when we had it rolling, you know, I felt like that he developed a confidence with the team that they felt like that if we did if the team lost, it was really that we didn't execute the game plan. Right. They trusted him so much, and you did it. And so it was fun for me to watch as he would prepare the team for a game, and he'd say, this is what we're going to do defensively. We're going to help off of this guy. We're not guard. We'll let this guy shoot all day, but we're going to help here. And then this is how we're going to score offensively. We're going to, you know, Ricky Callaway's going to score on the baseline, and you know, Steve's going to be in the lane, and we're going to run triangle, and Steve's going to get him in foul trouble because they're going to be aggressive on him. It was fun to watch the team prepare so hard, and then you go into the game. And even as a manager, I knew what we were going to try to do. So as I'm watching the game, when it would go wrong, you know, I'd look at it and say, oh no, we said we were going to go above that screen, and we're going below. And, you know, that's when Coach and I got mad on the sidelines, and he knew that's not what we were supposed to do. And so, and then when it worked, it was so cool, because it was like, yeah, that's what we set up to do.
Absolutely.
So it was always fun for me to watch that.
That was the greatest feeling, is like when the game plan worked, when you were playing those talented teams like Michigan. You know, when I played, they always had 3 or 4 NBA players, Michigan State. And then you walk in there with a group of guys who all of us probably going to end up being plumbers when we're done. And by the end of the game, we won. And that was, you know, I felt like anybody who came up under that system, I know you didn't choose that path, but anybody who came up in that system under Coach Knight could have ended up being a coach easily, because the he taught. But also, like you allude to, you take those principles and you apply them in your position now. Right. And it's in leadership, responsibility, accountability, discipline, all of those things you have to have in order to be successful in what you're doing as well. So,
in fact, I just watched you on the Big Ten Network when you guys beat Michigan State. Did you see that?
Yeah, somebody texted me. I caught it.
It was awesome. Now, did Coach Knight put you in the triangle every once in a while?
Every once in a while,
I figured he did.
But yeah, I had to run my butt off for the whole half and get exhausted trying to get open, getting people in foul trouble. So I know exactly what you mean.
So you were the Steve Alford of your team. I mean, we're trying to get you the ball,
Yep.
Obviously that game we just watched on the Big Ten Network, I mean, you just lit up Michigan State. You had like what, 34 or 36.
Yeah, 34 points. And I
just,
was sleeping one day and somebody texted me like, "Yo, you on the Big Ten Network?" I said, "Man," so I turned it on. I hate seeing myself so skinny. I said, "What happened?"
Hey man, I tell you one thing, I would love to see you out there today, because I mean,
Right,
it was
yeah,
that's how we won. We took
Yep.
a great player like you and
Yep.
put role players around them that understood their role and played to
Yep.
win, and just figured out a game plan, and it was
Absolutely.
awesome to see it work when it worked.
Absolutely, man. So you took over as the athletic director July 1st, 2020, man. Did you see yourself in it? I know you've been part of the program for a better part of about 20 years, right? So you've seen everything, you know what I mean? Is this something you was gunning for from day one, or just kind of happened for you and you ended up here based on all the experiences that you've had?
I would say I wasn't really gunning for it, or thought, I thought about it, because I think anybody, if you're in leadership position, if you don't think about maybe what it would be like, even if you're an assistant coach, you think, well, if I were a head coach, this is what I would do. And so I remember when I was, because I've been here I think I just celebrated my 30th anniversary, if you believe that, AJ.
Wow.
Here. And so I remember being in the varsity club and thinking about, okay, if I was ever in charge, I didn't really, like I said, gun for it, but you think about, if I'm in charge, here's how I would do it, or here's how, or you see other people in other schools, or so as athletic director, I really thought about, it's an interesting position to watch it and see what influence you can have, how you do it for you. And then when Fred came in, Fred Glass, he gave me an unbelievable opportunity to be really right by his side. So I really got a bigger taste of it because of the opportunity he gave me as his deputy AD. And then when he decided it was time, he wanted to move on to something else, then it really got me going to thinking about, okay. And what I did, AJ, was I thought it was, in my mind, I wanted to approach the position like I'd never been here before, because I didn't want people to assume, well, he's a longtime guy and he might feel like he's entitled to it. And I didn't feel that way at all. I felt like it was almost the opposite, that people would see me as like the number 2 guy. And what I wanted to do is put together a plan as if I was coming from like California and they didn't know me. And so share a vision like I was brand new. And so that my approach, and my wife used to get frustrated with me a little bit because I talked to her about my ideas, and I'd say to Heidi, look, I got to approach this thing. I'm the biggest underdog out there. I've got to go into it with a mentality that I've got to prove myself. Right. And she'd say, well, people know who you are. They know your leadership ability. And I said, no. I said, I'm going into it like I really have to have a vision. And that's how I still feel today. Is, just because I've been here doesn't mean anything. It means I know a lot of stuff, but you have to be a leader and have a vision for where is the department going to go. And I think ultimately that's what helped give me the opportunity, really, is sharing that vision.
Yep. And you took over in the middle of a pandemic, really, man. I would like you to kind of explain to the fans and the people some of the difficulties with taking over, a position as big as IU in the middle of a pandemic, where everything, that you normally would be focused on, you got to shift your focus and think about building this car as you're driving it at the end of the day. So kind of talk about some of the difficulties, if it's been difficult, of getting this season and getting through the pandemic in all of our sports.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's not something you ever really prepare for, but at the same time, what we did is try to turn, the biggest negative into a positive. So, there's certainly challenges, because it's one of the more disconnected physically times we've had. It's unprecedented. So everyone has had to be physically apart, but at the same time, how can we be connected during that time? And so during the transition, again, Fred was really great. He couldn't have had a better situation to prepare me to take over. And then when I did, just felt like really was able to hit the ground running. Just really, my leadership style is to surround myself and put great people around us on our team that can lead and understand what we stand for, and what our expectations are, and really utilized this opportunity, which was disjointed and uncertain, to really try to bring some certainty to things, and to give people confidence that whatever turn this takes, we're going to be okay. And not to sound like a Pollyanna or a cheerleader or just give false hope, but you have to believe that, if we do the right things and we've got the right plan and we execute that plan and we work really hard, that we're going to be okay. And so, although it's been certainly challenging, I think really from our end, I feel like we, not even just me, but our sort of new administration, our plan has really gotten off to a good start because of our focus and really working together on things through a challenging time.
Yep. And I think, fans just can't really understand the difficulty this is on the players and on the student athletes. The switch to virtual, back to, input, whatever it has to be done, not seeing their parents for a long time, not being able to just do normal, like when after games, Michigan State game, I go have a nice dinner with my family.
Right.
And they don't understand how that kind of, you got to go home and sit in your room, get a pizza and sit in your room after having one of the greatest, our games opportunities of your life and all.
Right.
So, I hope people really start to understand, like, this is very different. Everybody's building the plane as they're flying it. And, you got to be really, real patient with the way things are today till we figure everything out and hopefully get back to some sense of normalcy. So I definitely commend you for that, man, because I can imagine being a senior, you know what I mean? Just not knowing uncertainty and not having a full, avenue to, express my talents and myself, and having to suppress it, you know what I mean? And not being able to explode like I really want to.
That's really well said, AJ, because that is, one of our main focuses. It has been and continues to be making certain we have the most meaningful experience for our student athletes as we can during this challenging time, and to really focus on health and safety, and not just from COVID, but the mental health of our student athletes, because it is, it's been, until you go through it, you don't realize it. And there's certainly a lot of people that are way worse off. But at the same time, just trying to make certain that we keep everyone on a level playing field and don't get too high or too low, and we stay focused and appreciate the little things. And so we've done everything we can to provide the most meaningful experience for our student athletes as we possibly can, and keep our momentum going. Because I feel like our department, again, thanks to Fred and his leadership, we've had momentum. And we just don't want the pandemic and all the challenges to really stall that. We got to keep going in the right direction.
Right. Being in that seat you're in, man, these IU fans, they it's a gift and a curse, man. Like it's great to have such passionate and loyal and fans, but also it could be, from your seat, it could be like, as fans, people are never satisfied with something. And I know that all ADs go through that. What would you say to all the fans past and present that are following the program? What is Scott Dolson thinking about the state of our athletics right now? What's going through your mind?
Yeah, I would say to our fans to keep that passion going, because what I worry about, to be honest with you, is I want people to care, and I want people to be upset when we lose, and to be frustrated, and to make certain they want the greatness, because that's what I want, you want, we all want. But at the same time, we are dealing with 18 to 22-year-old kids, and sometimes, I do worry at times that it's easy to forget that we are young people and they're growing, they're going to make mistakes, they are human. There are things that, social media sometimes makes people numb to kind of what happens out there, and you don't want the negativity to ever be a bad reflection on our university.
Right.
But at the same time, we want that passion, because that's part of, like you said, it's our greatest strength sometimes could be our greatest weakness. But from my perspective, I think it's important for fans to understand that I want the same things they do, and I want it all. I want our student, just like you, AJ, I want it academically. I want our kids to personally have all the support and develop in every way, shape, or form from a personal standpoint. And then, I want to win. I talk about winning, and I want to win in everything, including basketball, but everything. And so, we'll continue to work at it and continue to do all we can. And, I've got the same high expectations everybody does. So I think sometimes that's the challenge, is when there is frustration, that people think, do they care? Is it really important? And it is. But at the same time, there's a process, and that we've got to make certain that we do all the things the right way to ultimately get to where we want to go.
Yeah, people think my perspective of being positive is just, I don't want to be negative. It's from my perspective, and I didn't notice until I got older. When I look back, man, I went through 3 transfers and I went through a scandal kind of, when the tape comes out at the end of my senior year.
Yeah.
And when you're in it, I'm not thinking like, man, this is crazy. Like, I'm just like, all right, man, we can win without them. We can win without them. We can win without them. So that's why as an alum, I don't come off as they're losing. No, it's like, first of all, this is temporary. We're in a pandemic. So everybody gets a pass, in my opinion. I mean, that's just me. Because we're in a pandemic and nobody's in their state of mind where they would be if we had a whole year of preparation. But I went through that. So I understand what, those moments in time happen. But I also understand everything could turn around at the snap of a finger. So it's like, never get too high like I try to be as a player. Never get too high, never get too low. Stay right in the middle and finish and live with the result as long as you're giving the most effort. So, man, I commend, you guys for what you guys are doing, man, and to continue, a lot of our programs are successful and sometimes it gets ignored because, basketball is so up here. But I'm watching football be successful. Soccer has always been successful. Baseball is successful. Women's basketball is balling, and all the other sports are reaching that pinnacle where we want to be in totality for IU sports. So, I can definitely concur with what you're saying, and I respect what you're doing. And what the last question I'll ask you about that is, you talked earlier about your vision. What is your vision for IU athletics?
My vision is that I want to do everything possible to maximize the opportunity for our student athletes. And I think that if you look at it from that perspective, is that, why we're here is that we want to make certain that our student athletes, as they come through, when they graduate, they look back and they say academically, again, personally, life skills, leadership, all of that, and obviously competitively, that they maximize. Because this is when at the end of the day, I don't care if you're a golfer, you're a swimmer, you're a basketball player, football, whatever it is, it's an unbelievable opportunity. And what I worry about is I don't want student athletes to come here and have regrets and think about, I could have been this, I could have been that. And it's hard. You know this, AJ, it's hard. It's hard to succeed in all those areas. And for my role is to make certain that we provide the resources to make certain that all of our athletes have an opportunity to maximize that opportunity. And as I said, in all those phases, and winning is a part of that. And again, you're not going to win in everything, but again, we talk about winning and the process to win. And I want to win for IU and for the athletic department, but I want to win for our kids because when we have exit interviews, when a student athlete, their career is over, it's amazing. And this may be stating the obvious, but it's incredible when you interview a student athlete who's had a Big Ten championship or played on the Big Ten championship team or had really meaningful wins. Their experience is so much better. They come back for a 25-year anniversary and they talk about that championship or that great run we had. And it just makes their experience that much better. So if we want to maximize the experience, success competitively is a big, big part of that. And so, it's important that we do it all. We want it all, and not one over the other, but we certainly want it all. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's the vision is to get that done. There's lots of components that I think from an administration standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, we can do to provide the resources to help our student athletes maximize that opportunity. And that's my role.
Awesome, man. And talk to a lot of former players. You have our support, man.
That means the
one
world.
of us. And once you go through that gauntlet, man, you're definitely one of us. And you know what the gauntlet I'm talking about.
I know.
Last thing I want to talk about, man. Coach and I returned last winter, man. Did you have any involvement in that? And how did you feel it affected Hoosier Nation in a positive way? Did you feel like it affected Hoosier Nation in a positive way, and were you happy to see it happen?
Yeah, I tell you, Jay, that was one of the most meaningful experiences I've had working here at IU. And that was a collaborative effort. I give Randy Whitman and Quinn Buckner, two great members of the fraternity, the brotherhood. Randy and Quinn were huge in getting that done. Bob Hamill and Larry Rink, and then a woman, Katie Bates, who you met, who's on our staff here. So all of us kind of came together and had a small committee that helped put that together. But it was really, as you know, former player driven.
Yeah,
and to see that happen, and to see the organization of it, and work with, those guys are heroes of mine growing up, with
absolutely.
Quinn particularly, and then Randy. I was in, 8th grade when they won the championship in '81. So, to work with those guys, and then to ultimately bring Coach back, and to see Pat Knight, who obviously you played with. Pat was so instrumental in that. Pat was awesome. And I babysat Pat when I was a manager. I worked for Tim Knight. That's when I first heard the name AJ Guyton, because Tim went to see you play.
Yeah.
I was working for Tim. He saw you play because we were looking at for his AU team and just different things. I remember coming back and saying, man, this AJ Guyton is a diamond in the rough. We've got to get him. And he was, he was all over you. And he was talking to his dad about you. But then for Hoosier Nation, for Coach to come back, it just felt like, everything was the way it was supposed to be.
Right.
And to see the looks on the former players' faces, I remember coming off the court afterwards and seeing Quinn Buckner and Isaiah Thomas embrace. And the emotion was, that day to me was just the most emotional day to see it. And I felt like I was like staying outside my body and watching it happen. I was in the locker room when Coach came in, Coach Knight, before the game, and took him in the Cook Hall locker room. It was Pat Knight, Randy Whitman, Bob Hamill, and myself, and we took him in there, and Archie was in there with the team. And it was just an out-of-body experience to hear Coach Knight talk to the players. And, I never thought that would happen again. And to see it was really, really cool. And as I said, one of the most meaningful things. And then for Hoosier Nation, just to see people crying in the stands and what it really meant for the really tried and true, long time, been through ups and downs for our fans. It meant so much to them. So, it's great for the Knight family, great for the former players, and great for Hoosier Nation. It was awesome.
It definitely was one of the greatest moments in Hoosier history, man. And I'll end with this, man. I want to thank you for joining and taking time out of your busy schedule to be a part of the show, man. I talked to Quinn last. Quinn was the last interview I had. I'm sorry, Luke was the last interview I had. Luke Jimenez, and Quinn was before him. But and I told him one of the biggest reasons why I started to do this podcast was because I want to help bring IU back full circle. What I meant by that was alumni. I would like, and I talked to him about him and Isaiah. I had Isaiah on. I talked to him about helping to spearhead an all-inclusive IU reunion. Not that the reunions are exclusive. Right. It seems as if, there's a reunion for the Cream guys and a reunion for unintended. It's not intended, but that's what ended up happening. But, in a couple of years, as you get, acclimated to your position, is to really dig in and have a weekend for all IU alum, including the big guy behind me, to come back and to just embrace and be a part, man. And he told me to talk to you about it. So, and then
hey, I'm all in.
That's what spearheaded me to call you. I said, let me call Mr. Dolson, man, and
that's awesome.
Get this. So that's the end result of this whole thing when it ends. I want a lot of footage and a lot of energy from that for that to happen. And because to me that's special. It's so much history, man, and it's not just Coach Knight's history, Com Crean's years, and and Coach Davis's years, and all those guys. We don't just lose those guys because they didn't play for Coach Knight, and we kind of forget because Coach Knight was his years were so outstanding. We kind of like, no, we want everybody involved. So, man, I'll be reaching out in the next few months, to start get that process going, man, to get that all-inclusive IU reunion, man. So,
well, AJ, I'm all in. That means the world that you want that, and we want the same things. And I just want to thank you not only for that vision, but just doing this. And your support's been unwavering. I mean, you're an All-American, Hall of Famer, and obviously one of our greatest all-time players. But what makes Indiana basketball special is the people underneath those jerseys, and just the fact that you take the time to do this, to really, bring the brotherhood together, to bring the fraternity together, means a lot. And I just want you to know on behalf of us, and I take off my former manager hat, but just in my administrative role, it just means everything to have our former players connected. It's part of the whole thing. And so certainly we're brothers on that, and anything I can do to help, you count on that for sure.
We will. We'll let you get through the pandemic first.
That's
When we see that roadway clear up, we'll get to it. But
man, I appreciate you having me on. This is so
no
cool.
problem, man. It was fun, man. Once again, got Scott Dolson on, Vice President, Director of Athletics for Indiana basketball. Man, we want to thank you for everything, and the program's trending upwards, man, and everybody's having success. It's fun to watch. Can't wait till we get back fully where we can get that IU crowd up in it to help our guys and lead them.
For sure.
But that's coming very soon, man. And also, you guys are hosting the NCAA tournament as well.
Right.
So that's a big responsibility, man. And
Yep.
if I'm in Bloomington, man, I'll reach out, say hello.
Do that. Love to.
Plan on being around and coming and speaking to some of the guys around that time. But
that means a lot.
Yep, no problem, man. Thank you for having.
Take care, AJ.
Appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. Keep in touch.
You too.
AJ. Thanks a lot.